The Philippines corporate regulatory body has a new leader tasked with regulating and facilitating business formation. The Securities and Exchange Commission aims to ensure transparency in the way corporates do business, protecting investors and the public. With us now, newly appointed SEC Chairman, Attorney Francis E. Lim. Good to see you, Attorney Francis. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Cathy. It's been a while, no?
It has
Before,
been.
yeah,
And
yeah.
congratulations
Good luck.
to you.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
the market should be happy, but how are you coming along?
Well, so far, very pleasant experience, no? The workforce of the SEC, quite young, 39 years old, which includes me. And I see a lot of energy, no? It's a matter of redirecting it to the right direction. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Right. I say the markets are happy because you're not a new face. I've met you personally as a journalist when you were still PSE
President.
So that gives you a lot of experience, perhaps, or maybe the benefit of history
Yep.
to guide you through.
That's correct, no? My stint as PSE president has given me not only experience, but perhaps wisdom, no? To make the right decision. Because I came from there, you know? I dealt with the investing public. I dealt with the exchange as a front-end regulator. I dealt with intermediaries like the brokers, the investment houses, and the retail investors. No? Not excluding institutional investors. In fact, one of my advocacies when I was at the PSE was to call for the formation of a shareholders group, and it's now known as the Shareholders Association of the Philippines, or SharePhil, because I really believe that we have to deepen, no, the local market, no, so that we won't be at the mercy of portfolio investors abroad. They come and go, you know that. So,
They do, but
and
that was like maybe 15 years ago when
about
SharePhil
12 years ago,
was
yeah.
created. What is your thinking now about the depth of the capital markets? Has there
still-
been enough progress during that time?
Not enough, to be very frank, no? And that's one thing that we at the SEC have to work on. No? Products, in terms of products, we don't have enough products. In terms of the investor base, we have to really encourage or incentivize people, or at least make an environment where they can trust the market to put their money in. No? So there are lots of things to do, especially with the onset of new assets, no, the digital assets, no, and especially gambling, no, online gambling, no. My fear personally is that instead of our young people, students, and even our OFWs, which should be part of our target market to develop the capital markets, they put their money in gambling. It's easy money, no, and you know, it may have a detrimental effect on the capital market. Not to mention that you know, the moral component of it, no, aspect of it, is something that we should not lose sight of.
So are you for or against it?
It's we have to protect first our children from getting used to online gambling. Okay, we have to protect our the less fortunate members of society, because the temptation is there to make good quick money, and we have to protect our overseas Filipino workers, because again, it's digital. It's so easy to play the games, no, and you know. I'm not saying that these people, this bunch of persons cannot protect themselves, but as regulators, I think we have some moral, if not legal, obligation to protect them. So that's one of the items that is now occupying a big part of my thinking process.
But there are listed online gambling
Yeah.
operations.
Yeah.
And there is a move to restrict the illegal ones.
Yeah.
So where do you stand on that issue?
Of course, illegal ones, we have to, no, not illegal gambling, you mean? Well, for example, we talk about e-wallets, right? If you open e-wallets, there are online games there, no? So it's a challenge for regulators what to do. Okay, I understand that the BSP has issued some draft, what do you call this, circular, you know, for to be socialized. I think it's now being socialized. I think it's quite a departure from the original draft, because I was told before I joined the SEC that the original draft completely banned these online gambling apps, no, in an e-wallet. But now I think there's some shift of direction, no? And I think that's one thing that we regulators have to discuss what to do with them. Of course, it's not also good to totally ban them. For example, what I have in mind, no, if we can have a minimum deposit in your e-wallet before being allowed to gamble online, no, to play those games. For example, 50,000 at least in your e-wallet, so that you protect the children, the school children, protect the students, you protect the OFWs, no, so that you make it hard for them. No, it's not that we're dictating on them, but I think we have to have an environment where everybody is happy, balancing things. But those are the things that we can consider.
The Finance Secretary Ralph Recto proposed that all online gambling firms get listed in the stock market. What is your view on that?
Of course, as developer of the capital markets, I would love to see that because it will improve the governance. But you know, many of these online gambling platforms are offshore. Okay, so how can you list them in the stock market? So that's one thing to consider. But you know, if the online owners of the online platform are local and you get them listed here, why not? As long as the corporate governance requirements are observed by them, as long as they qualify to be listed in the exchange, why not? That's my own take there.
I'm going to go back to trust, a word that you mentioned early on, just a couple of minutes ago. It's a huge word for people to trust the capital markets, so you can get them to take part.
Yeah.
What do we need to build then? Where do we start?
Well, we have to first, sitting now as SEC chairman, they have to trust the primary regulator. That the primary regulator have the right mindset, you know, enabled, and really fair but no nonsense regulator. You know, trust and confidence in the stock market, I think, is essential, not only important, because if people don't trust the market, I think they will have, at the very least, second thoughts investing in the market. It's like going to a supermarket. No? If you don't trust the people there, if you know that they will not give you the cashier does not give you the right change, why should you go back there? No, if people don't, if you go to a supermarket with very few items to sell, they will choose another supermarket or department store where there are more products, where people enjoy shopping, where people can just park their money in, let's say, the cashier, yeah, and have a peace of mind that when they go back and get that money back, you know, and, their belongings back, they can get it. It's like the stock market, no? Investors trust their money and their stocks with the brokers, no? And if I were an investor, I would be very happy if any time that I need the money, the broker can give it back to me. No? If I need the shares of stock that I traded to them, I can get it back. Yeah, but the realities on the ground is that some brokers have failed doing that. No? I think we've seen instances in the past. So those are big negatives, no, for the equities market, at least.
So it would be a big positive that the stock transaction taxes were recently lowered. At the start of July, the SIMEPA law implemented lower stock transaction taxes. So a lot more investors who sell their stock would get a lot more proceeds.
Yeah, we've gone a long way. You know, it used to be just before it was reduced to 10 basis points, it was 60 basis points. That's a lot of money. No? So the CBEPA, or the Capital Market Efficiency Promotion Act, has put that in place. And I think experience in the region has shown that in one exchange at least, I really don't know the exchange, the market, first year of implementation, there was the volume, no, improved by at least 105%. And over a 5-year period, I think the volume averaged an increase of about 16 or 17%. So I hope that will happen. I think we're just in the very early stages after CBEPA took effect to have that data, but it remains to be seen.
It remains to be seen, but I did notice the spike, and so did the stock analyst during the first week.
Yeah.
But then again, Semepa picked up again in the news for another reason, which is a 20%
20%.
increase
Yeah.
on the interest earned for long-term deposits. It caused a lot of furore in the public. They were thinking that we didn't know about this. Why is Semepa doing this to our savings and deposits?
Yeah, of course, if I were uh, a depositor, 20% on interest that I earn, the interest in the bank's very small, and um, you take away 20% of that, no, I think that's big for me. No? But I don't blame the leaders. I think they benchmark it with the. There was a lot of study, and there were congressional committee hearings about this, and it's just harmonizing, making things equal. No? Unlike before, if you have a 5-year term deposit, it's exempt. But if so it's just. I think it's birth pains. No, people will get used to it. Of course, there's a lot of euro now. No, but, how I wish, that it could have been lower. But the government also needs money. That's the reality of the situation.
So they take away taxes on one end and then find another way to build it back.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of balancing act that went into it. No?
And also the kind of investment behavior that the government would like to perhaps get from the public. But
Yeah.
what do you think that will generate if indeed a lot more of the long-term deposits would be taxed?
Thinking about it from as former president of the PSE, it would be good for the equities market, from the debt to the equities market, no? Because 20% of on your gain or yield rather than pay that, you might as well go to the equities market where it's 10 basis points I would have to pay only. So that's why I said there was so much balancing act. No? I think it's also meant to, how do I call it, induce a change of mindset from into the capital markets, particularly the equities market.
Do you think that could have been better communicated by the finance department?
Unfortunately, I didn't follow the deliberations, but I think that's the way people feel now. No? It could have been, but truth tell, myself included, sometimes people don't care about what is going on. There are more exciting things that they want to read, but when the rule is there, when the law is there, we complain. But when we all had the opportunity to make known our concerns, during the drafting stage, I myself experienced that. When I did the REIT law, which was one of my advocacies while I was PSE, there was so much debate, and we were socializing it. Then all of a sudden, there was that REIT law, and people didn't know that there was even a REIT law. No? They didn't follow. No? I think we need a more engaged set of stakeholders. No? So that's the reason why, in the PSC at least, and I intend to do that. And I think the SEC has been doing that. We socialize whatever the proposed rule, the proposed law, so that we can have everyone engaged. In the hope that at the end of the day, of course, you cannot make everybody happy. It's impossible. At the end of the day, there will be an informed decision. Okay, that's why in the SEC, I think we have to have a system where it's any policy change, any proposed rule must be evidence-based, data-driven. That's very important. So that people, and you can easily, if it's database, evidence-based, then you can easily explain people why you're doing something a certain way. So no one can debate against data, right? Rather than just, this is what I want. It's subjective. This is what is good, without knowing that what you personally think is good, is not good after all, if confronted with data or evidence.
So earlier on, you did mention that you wouldn't be introducing any new laws, but you would enhance what we already have. And you did make a mention of REIT. What about PERA? What kind of amendments are you hoping to make and socialize to the stakeholders out there before coming out with amendments to the law?
Generally, I think we have enough laws to make our market more vibrant. way back in my exchange days, for example, the stamp duty, DST, no, document stamp tax exemption for secondary trading of equities through the exchange, I think lapsed in 2007. There was just a 5-year window. But one of my projects and I was lucky, to have done it. We made through our intervention, we made Congress give that permanent exemption. So that's one thing, that Congress did. Number two, the REIT. Okay, there was even people in the exchange said, "What are you doing? Go back and forth to Congress. What is this REIT?" Yes, some directors of the exchange then didn't even know about REITs. Now it's something. In fact, the first REIT, I think it was Ayala REIT, was launched in the midst of the this pandemic, and it's very successful. Okay, PERA. Well, the purpose of that is to encourage savings by giving incentives to the saver. We call it, I think, contributor, and encouraging employers to contribute to the PERA account that the employees set up. There was so much debate at the time whether we should make the PERA account voluntary or mandatory. But finally, Congress opted to make it voluntary. So it's not working the way it was envisioned. There are markets where the counterparts of PERA are made mandatory. And personally, that's one thing that we can look at, to make it mandatory. Because anyway, there's no mandatory amount that you have to set aside. What is present in the current form of the PERA law is a maximum, I think 200,000. And beyond that, you can the contributor or the employee can no longer claim tax incentives. In other words, the tax incentives is pegged only until 200,000. So even if you make PERA mandatory, an employee can save, let's say, 100 or 1,000 pesos a month until he reaches the age of 55, because it's not withdrawable. And if he does that, any income coming from the investment of your PERA money is entitled to exempt from taxes. Imagine that. And if the employer matches the contribution or the PERA account of his employees under the old law, the employer is entitled to deduct 100% of its contribution. Now, that's another thing that CIMEPA did. Under the CIMEPA, an employer is now entitled to deduct 150% of its contribution. You can just imagine that. And there's a provision in the PERA law which basically says that if you invest in your PERA money in eligible securities, one of which is listed as tax, as I said, it's exempt from income tax. So there will be liquidity in the market, and if you couple that with more investment products, okay, for example, I have something now which I've been trying to convince the SEC to do during my time, the depository receipts. For example, we can introduce a depository receipt where the underlying is a Google share, and you trade it here. You can put, and it's listed, okay, and people can put in their PERA there. So there are a lot of things to do, basic things, but it requires political will, and that's I really pay attention to things that will really deepen, build the depth and breadth of our capital markets.
So what's the timeline for that, the depository receipts?
Well, it's good you asked me. I met with the PSE. I think you know Roel Refrano. I got him from the Senate, and I made him join, and he's now the CEO, Chief Operating Officer of the exchange. And we agreed that we have to put in place the what they call the depository receipts backed by foreign equities, like shares of stock of Singtel, Apple, and so on. For me, I'm excited. Before I arrived in the SEC, I think they were proposing a sandbag approach. And I told the commissioner in charge, no, Commissioner Brian, I don't think we need a sandbag approach because anyway, it has been tested in other markets. So I think that's the direction that we're looking at. No? So more products. No? Hopefully, if we have a vibrant market, then more companies will get listed, more products, you know, more investors will play the stock market rather than because depository it's almost sure it's like a hybrid type of equities. No? So hopefully things like this will go a long way into further developing our capital markets.
Less than a month into your appointment, the president gave you a lot of assignments when he rang the bell at the Philippine Stock Exchange when he launched CIMEPA on July 1st. And he
July
said
1st.
he directed the SEC to streamline procedures, remove bureaucratic bottlenecks, and reduce transaction costs.
We did that.
You did.
Yeah.
I saw
For example,
that. But how exactly did you pick and choose which ones go first?
The low-hanging fruits. No? You know, I used to tell during my bank meeting 1 or 2 times, I told the group, I was your victim. I said, why? I needed articles of incorporation and bylaws of a company. You know what I had to pay? About 3,000 pesos for bylaws. No? Really about 10 pages and articles. Why did I have to pay 10,000 pesos? There were a lot of justification. No, I told them, we're not a revenue generating agency. We're supposed to develop the capital markets. We're supposed to make information in the SEC available to the investing public so that they can make good investment this year. And that's the reason why in one go we reduce reproduction cost of SEC documents or SEC-based documents by 50%. And I think it was welcome. In fact, and I think another directive was to minimize bureaucratic red tape. That we did by, what do you call this, adopting a deemed-approved policy, where we internally agreed on reasonable timelines. And if you're not able to approve an application or disapprove an application within that timeline internally agreed upon, the application will be deemed approved for if there are no deficiencies from the applicant. You know what, Cathy? I understand that, you can correct me, about 4,500 companies will stand to benefit from that deemed approved policy. And lastly,
What kinds of companies are these?
All companies, big,
medium
small,
size?
MSMEs, yeah, because I have friends, have long pending applications with the SEC. And even before I joined the exchange, I kept on receiving complaints, yeah, but we're trying to clear our backlog.
Right, but there is the verification process
Of
post
course.
the deem approved.
Yeah, there
So
is.
how can you ensure then that nobody gangs up on that kind of a loophole and take back whatever time you saved at the onset?
We're very much aware of that. And fortunately, in our system, if an application is filed, there is an initial review. Okay, after an initial review, if there are any deficiencies or non-compliances on the part of the applicant, we tell them, we return the application to them, tell them to comply. Okay. Now, there are also instances where the deficiency is minor, okay, and in our mind, pwede na i-approve, So we issue what we call a payment assessment form, which means to say that we did some due diligence in the application, and upon payment of the assessment, and we can approve it. So there are conditions. So it's not absolute. We're also aware that people might game that deemed approved policy, and therefore we made exceptions to that rule. For example, applicants for secondary licenses. For example, if I have a broker company and I'm applying for a secondary license, if our deemed approved policy will not be made applicable to them because it's just different set of requirements. Of course, it's tougher. Investment houses, those are excluded. So there are exceptions, yeah, and we're trying to balance things. No?
Are you getting some help from AI
Yeah.
in the verification process? Perhaps even the tracking app, because you did say that you wanted to have a real-time tracking app.
Yeah. Aging. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, it's now part of our twice a week NBAN meeting. I want the departments and even the extension officers to report on what they have acted upon during the previous week. Aging will be part of that. No? How long does original registration for corporate registration take place? Amendment, how long, and so on and so forth. So we'll, as I was um, uh, mentioning a while ago, a database, evidence, what do you call this, based decision making. We will track them, and I think by and by we will be able to come up with a more permanent solution to this. So
You mentioned you're not a revenue generating agency, but you do have to stay sustainable. So how are you going to get the money back if you're not charging fees, you're removing all the fees involved, when in fact the SEC was supposed to hike fees from previous year's approvals?
we're not removing or making an absolute exemption to the premium. What we granted so far was to reduce the fees and granted some discounts. And with the reason that we did that is, we also need money, to sustain our operations, to improve our operations, especially in the light of present-day demands like AI and so on and so forth, digital technology. There's a lot of capital, and we're mindful of that. So it was rest assured that SEC will not go bankrupt.
And you set up the help desks.
Yeah,
Considering that you've gone AI, I mean, you're getting enabled by AI, you still set them up in the headquarters ground floor in
Ground
Makati
floor,
City.
yeah.
What kinds of feedback, inquiries, or maybe even complaints?
I
you've
make it
got
a
around?
point to go there almost daily without unannounced. And I talk to the investors. Their needs are very simple. How do I register? How do I increase my authorized capital stock? What do I do in order to comply this? And that's why we set up. No? And the experience has been good so far. In fact, this morning's flag ceremony, and we do that. We'll always do. There was one, we call them client, the applicant, who wrote the SEC. Say, what's your name again? I'm very pleased with the way she handled my inquiry. She was proactive. So during flag ceremony, as a way of, and this has been done even during the time of Chair Aquino, I credit him with that. No? We make a special mention. We call that employee to the stage, just to pat in the back. I think it's very, and I think last week I was in shorts going because I walked to the office, and I stayed there for about 20 minutes taking video of what was going on.
What was going on?
How our people are entertaining those who are inquiring. And it was a very pleasant experience.
So the SEC chair goes undercover in his own office to find out.
I used to do that in the PSC. I just
what did
pop
that
up.
do?
Yeah,
Was that effective?
effective. So at least they come in early.
And for the flag raising ceremony, you mentioned they're low-hanging fruits,
Yeah.
but they really matter a lot to the regular investor, would-be investor. When would you go for the more difficult ones, and which ones would you latch on first to?
Yeah, I just want to attend our backlog first. Of course, without saying that, even as early now, my thinking process has already started. So I think I cannot do all things at the same time, but there are priorities. I think at least to me, the most complaint of our is the way the way we process applications. There are a lot of complaints. That's why that's low-hanging fruit. No? And our departments are measuring up to what I want, because they themselves say, well, yeah, it's good. No, I told them that I cannot go to the government and ask for an increased compensation if we don't show the government that we are able to do something in a short time, because that gives me high moral ground. This is what I need. This is what the SEC needs. And because it's challenging, no? I think the competition in the labor market, workforce market, is very, very stiff. And I don't think our compensation will really help us attract good people, which is what the SEC needs. Not only attract, but retain the good people. No? So, yeah, it's one step at a time, but I think it should be a purposeful, sincere thing to improve the services so that we will be trusted by the market, and not only by the market, by the government. No? Because if I were the president, why would I give an increased compensation to the SEC where the feedback is like this and like that? And I think that was, uh, for me, a reason why the president had directed us. I'm sure he also received, or his people received complaints. No? So I welcome that. Yeah.
And the president speaks again in about a week as we are speaking right now on July 22nd. He delivers his fourth State of the Nation address on July 28th.
28, yeah.
What would you be proud of in his address that would include the SEC's efforts?
Well, if the president recognizes what we have done so far, the reduction of fees, the discounted rates for MSMEs, the deemed approved policy, any of them, that would be a very, very good moral booster for all the SEC staff. What you have done, the institution has done, has been recognized no less than by the President of the Philippines. I think satisfaction should come from the way that we know in our conscience that we have done our best and that we made a difference in the lives of people, of businesses, no matter how little those are. Because you have to trust, to gain the trust of the market, of your stakeholders.
First the trust, and then get to deepen the markets
Yeah.
through the products that
Yeah.
you employ and implement.
Yeah.
And also to be clear on the rules with the 20% minimum float.
Yeah.
With the IPOs coming through, you did make a mention that it's dependent on how attractive
Yeah.
the IPO is in agreeing to a lower float. What's the direction there, and what is the thinking behind
Yeah,
a lower
I think,
minimum public float?
with due respect, at 20% float at IPO time, regardless of the size of the issue, I think I know it was done to improve liquidity in the market, which is one of the basic problems. But I think at 20% is a one-size-fits-all. No? And personally, I don't think that's the way it's done. So what I was thinking, and I requested the supervising commissioner to look at a tiered, depending on the market cap. So the higher the market cap is, the lower the percentage free float. No? I think that's being done by other exchanges. And let's see what happens. We have to internally discuss this, socialize it to the public, including the exchange. In fact, I want to start the proposal from the exchange so that we can work together. So that, and that's one thing that, for me, may be considered, rather than give exemptive relief from that 20% rule. I'm quite allergic to exemptive relief.
Yeah, I
Now,
know. Talk to us about exemptive relief, because there is that nuance there of having to give a 15% exemptive relief depending on market conditions.
Yeah.
That's where we're at
Yeah.
with the previous leadership at the SEC.
Yeah, exemptive relief is really exemption from the law or from the rules and regulations of the SEC or exchange, which should be approved by the SEC before they are made effective by the exchange. So a good example is the term limit for independent directors. Okay, there's a 9-year, what they call this, term limit. Of course, it's a comply or explain exchange. But why have I seen that they're overpaying independent directors? Because the SEC gave exemptive relief. And I've looked at the reasons, and they say there are no available replacements for this. I cannot believe that. Because, Cathy, you now work in a private company, and there's such a thing as succession planning. And a well-run company must start um, succession planning from the board down, right? So that in the event of retirement, death, resignation, there's a ready replacement. And we've done that in one listed company that I was an independent director of before I joined the SEC. So I cannot accept the reason why we have to retain this individual because we cannot find a replacement. Because the succession planning should be part of the cultural, corporate culture. No? So I cannot accept that. No? So, of course, exemptive relief, which is an exemption from compliance with existing laws and regulations, no, uh, is a power granted to the SEC. But if we look at the Securities Regulation Code, there must be compelling reasons to exempt a particular market player from the regulation. Compelling reason. Not available, uh, uh, no available replacement is never a compelling reason. It demonstrates the weakness of the company. And I will not be a party to that.
So how do we work that out then? Because we do have 3 tiers right now under the law. Minimum 20% for those with a market cap of over 1 billion pesos, 25% for those between 500 million to 1 billion, and 33% for those below 500 million. How's that going to change then?
That's a rule.
Yes.
So the trick there is to amend the rule rather than give individual exemption to a particular company.
So the direction then is to lower the minimum public float.
Depending on the market cap. Of
you
course.
Intending to make that permanent?
Yeah, at least yeah. But it's too early to say to what extent, because as I said, we need data. No, we need to benchmark it with other markets, especially our neighboring markets. No? So.
And when you benchmark that with other ASEAN markets, the last I've checked, it's between 10 to 30%.
Yeah.
Based on the paid up capital.
Yeah.
So we're
here much market cap. So
if we wanted to be
price,
competitive, then
and the number of shares to be offered to the public, let's say, it's there's a price fixing there, no mechanism. No? So it's not really based on the paid up capital. So it's different. It's a different formula.
So how then can we be as competitive as ASEAN markets if we were to be going lower, intending to go lower permanently on the minimum paid up capital?
Lower if your market cap is so high, so huge, I think it will even up. No? So I'm trying. I'm not saying that we will do it. We will study it. No? And if we come to the conclusion that it's not doable, then we'll take it from there. Then it may be time to give exemptive relief to whoever will apply. Consider, yeah. So it's a very fluid situation. Yeah. But my own rule, my personal, is just amend the rule to make it applicable to everybody, rather than apply to a particular company. Because once you do that, then other companies will have their own reasons why you should give exemptive relief. And I think from a market integrity, a market consistency, market certainty point, that's not good. Okay.
And speaking of IPOs, you're wanting to expand the universe and include the government-owned and controlled corporations.
Yeah. Provided they are listable.
So who do you think would make the cut?
There are a lot of GFIs. No? There's a number of GFIs. There's a lot of GOCCs that will qualify, especially after the promulgation of the GCG law. No? I think under President Aquino, I recall it because we wrote the initial draft of the law in Accra law because Frank Dillon was the author. No? Which is a system that put in place good corporate governance practices in our GOCCs and what they call these GFIs. For example, we may want to look at banks like the Land Bank, and so I don't know. There are a lot. And so, and state-owned enterprises, I think that's one technique that the Vietnam exchanges did. They mandated their state-owned extra enterprises, which are the equivalent of our GOCCs here, GFIs here, to GOLIs. And Ho Chi Minh Stock Exchange is more listed companies their volume, and then the Philippine stock market, the volume is higher, yeah, market's more liquid. You know, one of my favorite stories, no, I took over the PSE, I think in 2004, I think September, if I recall it correctly. And I think early part of first quarter or the first half of 2005, we hosted staff from the Ho Chi Minh Stock Exchange. We trained them for 2 weeks on how to go about disclosure, how to draft their listing rules, their disclosure rules. No, and now they're much bigger than us. And at that time, SET, or the Stock Exchange of Thailand, we were just about the same. Now, you know, I don't know why. You know, I have my own theories.
What's your own theory?
My own theory is that the little things that we have not done, the little things that are anti-market, the little things, no, and the accumulation, I think, was negative to the developer, capital market. You know, little things, exemption, and so on and so forth, patting at the back without real penalty, yeah. You know, enforcing rules selectively. I think these are, it may, in isolation, they may be little, but if the international investors know, my God, these regulators are exempting people from compliance in the rule, why should I invest in that market?
Basically, the lack of governance,
Yeah,
and the need to put in more governance. I did speak with governance advocate Dr. Jess Estanislao not very long ago on this very same program, and he did say the PSE and the SEC should work together.
Yep.
Instead of having very different requirements, making it very difficult for Philippine corporations to list, to become an issuer of bonds, or to be a participant in the capital market, makes it very, very difficult. Emphasis on very, very difficult.
That's why collaboration, I think, between the SEC and its frontline regulators like the PSE and the PDEX is very important. We act as one. Although we have the ultimate power to approve or disapprove, I think it's good that we collaborate, no? And that's why one example that I mentioned was the depository receipts, no? So I understand that there was some misgivings on the part of the SEC. I don't know why, because that was one of the projects that I had in mind, I think my second year or third year of PSE. But up to now, it's not in place, though. So yeah, I agree with Dr. Jess. We have to work together. We have to discuss things rationally, with of course, considering the totality of things, so that we can act as one, even in terms of enforcing the rules, of investigating. Okay, we have to act as one. Otherwise, if we don't do that, you know, the market in general suffers, no? And I think we've seen it, no? We're one of the oldest stock exchanges in the region. I think we're second only to Hong Kong. I did that research, and it's still like this. I think, with due respect, we have lots of laws here in the Philippines. You know that. I think the problem is enforcement, implementation, and that's one thing that the Securities and Exchange Commission can really enforce. No, let's execute. In fact, in my message to the SEC employees during the turnover ceremonies, vision without execution remains to be an aspiration. Okay, so let's execute. Okay, let's implement. Anyway, we were the ones who made the laws. We are in the executive branch of government. Our duty is to implement the laws the way they were envisioned by Congress to be enforced and implemented. As simple as that.
You also have the benefit of hindsight when you come to think of, you're finding yourself now on the other side of the fence, because you were Rappler's lead counsel in the SEC's shutdown case against it back in January 2018. And you were also Rappler's counsel in several tax cases filed during the Duterte administration. So how do you think the previous role that you've had will inform you in how to take on the problem cases that are about to come to the SEC?
Well, that's one advantage that I had. I was on the other side of the fence. I was, in a sort, as in a manner of speaking, also a victim.
Why
Yeah.
is that?
Because, it paid me, for example, that people are unjustly accused, unjustly treated. For example, with due respect, and this is being proven by the courts of law. The cases, the revocation against Rappler. Okay, the law is very clear. You have to give the company certain day of court before, curative period. There was this decision of the SEC in the Teves case, the national requirements. Those who breached the national requirements were given by the SEC 2 years to cure defects. That did not happen in Rappler. Why? And your guess is good as mine. No? Why all of a sudden you didn't give the company? And when you revoke a corporate franchise, you're like killing a person. Fortunately, the court saw light, and things as they are now. We're happy that at least our court acted independently, and that was one reason why, when I was in private practice, I was really very involved in with the Supreme Court, trying to simplify the rules, trying to to refine the rules to avoid delays, to avoid bottlenecks, because that's also an issue and against our court system. Trying to educate the judges, even the Court of Appeals, the staff. I happen to be the chairman of the Commercial Law Department of the Philippine Judicial Academy, which trains judges and court personnel. And I really devoted a lot of time there, on top of trying to simplify the rules of procedure in our court system. Because I believe that at the end of the day, a strong independent judiciary is, I think, very important. The executive branch may abuse, the legislative branch may abuse, because they're, the reality on the ground is they need the votes of the people, right? But if you have a strong independent judiciary, I think it will give a lot of market confidence. And that's not happening in the United States. Trump issues order, a federal court, a district court, the counterpart of our regional trial court, issues a temporary restraining injunction against an order of the President of the Philippines, against a president who is strong-willed. Yeah, so I believe in really developing a core of judges and justices that can act not only honestly and competently, but who have the courage to really, this is the law, regardless of you're the president, regardless if you're the president of the stock exchange, regardless if you are the Speaker of the House, we will just decide the cases in accordance with law. It should be, I know it's a dream, yeah, but given Philippine context, but to the extent that we can do it in our own little way, why not?
Just as a final point, you mentioned you teach.
You
teach.
Yep.
And they're very young lawyers. How do you now guide them that there is another path forward? You started out as a litigator. Look where you are now, focusing on the capital markets as a lawyer, and now trying to deepen the capital markets and encourage everyone to invest and make the economy grow and also make for better lives. How do you now encourage the young ones, the
that's
young
one
guns?
thing that when I was made president of the stock exchange, I did not know much about the equities market. I can say that very frankly. Okay, and I learned the ropes through hard work, through studies, blah blah blah. And that's the reason why I believe that financial literacy is a must. I'm sure that I could have been a better stock exchange president if I really knew just the basics of investing. But I had to do extra work. So one of my asks is to make financial literacy a part of high school subjects, or better still, a part of the college education, regardless of the course that the student decides to major in. And that will go a long way. Yeah, especially amidst these new products, no, digital assets, yeah, crypto. Yeah, people have to understand. That our children, students who will be the future leaders, yeah, and will just the basics, no, and in the Capital Market Development Act that was passed by Congress, I was Phoenix president at the time. I was able to insert a provision there. Unfortunately, they did not pass the Senate, so it's now back to, and I intend to pursue that. Now, what's happening nowadays that the PSE has its own investor education program, the SEC has its own investor program, Phoenix has its own investor share. Then why don't we just give that task to the government and these investor education programs of the different business organizations by the different advocacy groups will just supplement the basics that they already know, and it will make for me. That's one of the dreams that I have.
Do they want to go your way, your students?
Hmm?
Do they want to go your way, in your path, instead of looking for maybe being a litigator, is to be Attorney Francis Lim at some point?
I hope. But because being a lawyer, then if lawyer for me is not only earning. No? I think it's being able to do something, no, that's for the greater good. And that's one reason why I accepted the post. When it was offered to me, the answer was a resounding no. My own analysis, I was retired directors of several big name companies. I could do my 8-kilometer walk a day, leisurely. I could watch movies. I could go out of town with my families. With my family, with the children, without never anybody noticing. And and said, there's so much to thank God for, country for. Although everything I said, if only to be able to give back to God and to country, I will do it. That's how I came to this decision.
And that no became a yes.
I made a yes. Yeah.
And all the best, Attorney
Thank you.
Francis Lim,
Thank
in
you
its
very much.
early days. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All the
Thank you,
best.
Cathy.
Stream all episodes of Thought Leaders with Cathy Yang on Spotify and on One News PH YouTube channel. If you haven't done so, like or follow my social media pages. I'm Cathy Yang. This is Thought Leaders.